Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true, and open debate you've been looking for. Police officers are duty-bound to protect and serve, maintain law and order, and keep the peace for all citizens. And last year, there was no doubt the police were on the job in a major way. Statistics show an overall decrease in crime by 8%. Murders were in the double digits, the lowest since 2010. Across the board, the numbers were down, with the exception of a few crimes, most notably rape. Yet, complaints against police and fatal police shootings rose substantially. And then there is the notion of the fear of crime. Do these numbers reflect the true state of crime? And are we or do we feel any more secure? Police say they are waging a war on crime, and tonight we're talking to the man who is leading that assault, the Commissioner of Police. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Golf, and it was a great way for us to get out on Saturday morning. When I moved home in 2014, coming from the U.S., I was so accustomed to being on my phone, 24/7. And so when the unlimited package, was introduced with Alive, I was crazy excited. For me, with chatting with all of the parents and the students and such like that, my phone is my life. And so being free to be out here on the golf course, use my data, and not have any worries, it feels like I'm back in the U.S. again. So it's awesome, awesome service.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home.
With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you.
Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
On October 30th, 2017, he became the 7th Commissioner of Police. He served as acting commissioner at various intervals prior to this appointment. He joined the force in November of 1980 and steadily rose through the ranks. As commissioner, he has command, superintendence, direction, and control of the force. Over the years, Mr. Ferguson's postings led him to duties in the Family Islands, Central and Southern Divisions in New Providence. He has worked in some of the more critical areas of the force, including sexual offenses and serious crime squads of the Criminal Investigation Department. Eventually, he became the head of the Homicide Squad of the Central Detective Unit, commander of the Drug Enforcement Unit, and as officer in charge of the Central Division. Commissioner Anthony Ferguson is my guest. Welcome to On the Record, sir.
Thank you so much, Jerome. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are going to talk tonight about, I think, a topic that interests everyone in some way, shape, or form. It's probably one of the most talked about things in this country and probably anywhere in the world. Yeah. Crime and criminal activity is really a part of humans, and wherever we are in the world, there is some kind of criminal activity, and so it makes your job so very important and critical to our everyday living. Your style of leadership, I find, is a little different. from the outside looking in, you seem to be more aggressive towards criminals. Is that the correct assessment, or because as a person just looking in from the point that you took office, or the time that you took office, there was a very different approach.
Yeah, Jerome, coming from the bottom up and as you indicated, working in more critical areas, the Central Detective Unit, the Drug Enforcement Unit, I had the opportunity to really see a lot of things and studied a lot of things. I had the opportunity to compare and contrast by way virtually of looking here in the Bahamas and well-traveled around the world, and sit in discussions on a wide range of how to tackle crime. And so that really prepared me for this day. And so I really understand what it's all about, how to deal with these things. Crime is very dynamic and it's somewhat complex. And so you have to know when to change and deal with those aspects.
In preparing for the show and reading your bio, I found it interesting that you would have worked in some of the more difficult areas of the force. I mean, you talk about sexual offenses and things of that nature. Those are I would think those are some of the hardest areas. Homicides, how particularly did those experiences prepare you for the challenges that you now face as head of the force?
I understand when I get a report from an officer on a crime scene, I'm able to quickly analyze it and be able to recognize what it is that we are dealing with, simply because I was actually working firsthand in those areas. So you gain that kind of experience, and so you could really understand what it is that people are talking about. So you can appreciate it.
I see also from my own experience, police officers out in large numbers, roadblocks, day and night. Even I understand there are plainclothes officers about, and you seem to have been able to deploy officers in larger numbers. How are you able to sustain that, and has that placed any additional strain on the operation itself or the operations of the force?
No, Jerome. What I really did was, when you take over leadership of an organization like Royal Bahamas Police Force, or any police force in general, you have to be able to analyze things. You have to know where it's happening, who is responsible, when it's likely to happen. And so you have to make your deployment and put them where it really counts. And that is a part of my mandate. I grew up in a force where persons who were leading me, they schooled me well.
Okay.
And all I did was apply what was learned as I was coming up and put it into practice, and I share it with those persons that I now lead. And so we're having a good connection, and hence you were seeing a lot of things. And as far as officers overwork, no. No officers are deployed for any long amount of hours.
Okay.
It is how you deploy your people.
So it's a different management.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have read as well the use of defense force officers. I'm very interested into how that dynamic worked is working, because one of the criticisms is that defense force officers are military men; they're militarily trained. So when you put them out into the civilian environment, does that change? Is there a concern, or how has that worked?
No, it's not a concern for me, because before you go out in the field, you would meet and you will talk to all parties concerned. And so they blend right in. And then, bear in mind, these are well-trained, well-disciplined, and so they understand command.
Okay.
So there are no issues.
No issues. Has that helped to impact your work, though, the use of Defense Force officers?
Definitely, definitely, because the more numbers you have on the road, and the numbers count, and then you have a greater focus. You're able to cover your mandate, because particularly if you recognize that there's a problem here, you ought to be able to deploy some teams there, some teams over there, and when you look at the whole scope of things, then you really fill the puzzle, and that is what we try to do.
Where would you say you've had some of the greatest successes? I mean, outside of just the statistical numbers and the declines that we've seen in specific areas, where would you say you've had some of your greatest success thus far?
I think I was particularly pleased to see the numbers in homicides being reduced, the numbers in armed robberies being reduced, the numbers in other property crimes are trending down. While one may just look at numbers, and then if you listen, your ear should also be to the communities. And so that tells you whether or not your operations or what you are doing is effective, because you have to have, your ear have to be more than one-dimensional. You know, you cannot just listen to your organization, you also have to listen to what is happening out there. You have to keep it on the ground, and you get the signal, and you're able to transmit that signal into the organization and ready the troops, inspire them to be able to go out and serve and protect the Bahamian people.
Do you think criminals have gotten the message that, and I'm going to use this term as a new sheriff in town, do you think they have gotten that message and maybe thinking twice about some things?
I think so. You know, when we appeal to members of the public, we also talk to them. If we're saying to them, you should not do this, that includes them. And so I believe some of them are listening.
Okay, good news. Just yesterday, a $1.9 million contract was signed with ShotSpotter Technology to provide 92 sensors that are, able to trace gunshots. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that may assist your work?
I think yesterday we witnessed a state-of-the-art technology. The minister quite eloquently laid it out, and it is something that I support, the Royal Bahamas Police Force really support. We understand what this can do in order to reduce violent crime, particularly shootings. Last year, I led a team to the U.S. on a fact-finding mission to really look at it and talk to people who have it, and we are satisfied. We are satisfied that we are moving in the right direction with this latest state-of-the-art technology, which will, apart from somebody picking up the phone and calling us and said they are hearing gunshots in a particular area, this technology will actually, in some cases, report before people really report us and give us an accurate area of where it's coming from, so we can respond to that location. And no doubt, with all the other technologies, we should, if once we arrive in time there, we should be able to see persons coming from the area or actually in that location, or come right up on them and make an arrest.
Certainly the technology is going to be important, but the human element and human reporting, I'm sure, will continue to play an integral part in all of this. Are people a little bit more receptive to providing assistance? I mean, I know, police traditionally have always appealed to communities and people to work with them, and in some instances it has worked, and then in some instances, depending on what's happening, there is pushback. But are people, a part of your success, is it because the people are coming forward or reporting or being a little bit more cooperative?
Yes, I think we have had, and we continue to see great support from members of the public, really great support. You know, people would not go wrong and broadcast that they are the ones who are telling the police, but judging from the police response to things, the arrests that the police are making, and they are spot on. So really and truly you can say that the Bahamian public has been supporting the police, and they continue to do so in great numbers.
How have your patrols actually impacted criminal activity? I mean, I know from my experience, I say a lot of crimes are just crimes of opportunity. People may see an opportunity to do something and will seize it, but you may think twice if you see a police officer or if something happens and the police is there. To what extent has your management of the patrols and the deployment, how has that assisted in maybe preventing and even interdicting criminals shortly after or thereafter a crime?
You know, it all goes to analyzing. Your statistical data will tell you where are the hot spots, where is it more likely that somebody would commit a crime, and you focus your patrols along those parameters. And the more numbers that you have out, you're able to intercept persons either going to commit a crime, actually on the scene of a crime, or just leaving a crime scene. And so the patrols are very important, and that is why just last year we acquired a number of police vehicles. Some of them are marked uniform cars, some of them are unmarked uniform cars, but there are lots of cars on the road.
I see them all the time.
Yeah.
And it works. I mean, we'll talk about it a little later, but even from the standpoint of traffic violations, you know, sometimes you're on approach to a red light, it's yellow, you consider, am I going to go or not? And then maybe in your rear view or cross, you see a police car and you figure, let me hit brakes. And so, from my own personal perspective, I see the presence of the police. And so I know that, they are out in numbers and in areas. So, what has been, I've got to ask, what has been the response of your officers to this? Because if it is that you are making progress, or you feel like you are making progress, that must create a different dynamic.
Yeah, the officers are in high spirits. For me, I get on the ground. I'm the commissioner, but I'm among them. I don't see myself and sit in a high tower and don't get among the officers and have a conversation with them. And that has been a part of me coming up. Bear in mind, I was there.
Yeah.
And so
we've come from you come from the front lines.
And a goodly number of the executives today, we grew up together.
Okay.
And we actually were working together, so we know each other, and it's really connecting. The people on the ground, I try to, as best as I can, to move about and have a conversation and listen to them.
Right.
People on the ground today have a good idea of what is actually happening, what it is that they need. They're the persons who tell you. Once they tell me what they need, I look at it, and then I try to make it happen. And so far, it's been going good.
Good strategy, most definitely, and we certainly have seen some of the rewards thus far.
Yeah.
Commissioner, we're gonna take a quick break at this point. When we come back, we'll have more of our discussion with the police commissioner on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Matt, where in the world is Matt Lauer? Where in the world is Ellison Greenslade? And so this is about the blow while you were concentrating in Atlanta. So we can talk about it.
On the record tonight, the government's purchase of the Grand Lukine is a hot subject in the news. We're gonna
time I'm in the Bahamas, I use Rev Go Play.
From that fool, it's packing. Here he comes.
Yo.
Wait, Omar coming?
Boy, this Rev Go Play, solid.
Rev, you and us together.
This portion of On the Record is brought to you by Generali Insurance Company Limited.
Police are indeed waging a war on crime. Statistics suggest that they are winning and are on the winning side. Overall crime fell by 8%, murders decreased by 25% to the lowest since 2010, and shootings decreased by 39%. My guest, the Commissioner of Police, Anthony Ferguson. From very early on, or from months back, the crime numbers were trending down. Every time you came to the media, you indicated that the numbers were trending down, and that, of course, continued even into December, which is traditionally a busy month, if I can use that term. Numbers usually spike a bit in December for varying reasons. But I want to talk a little bit about murders, because that's usually the thing that stands out the most. Murders decreased by 25%. 91, I think, reported this year, over 120 last year. Any particular reason that you can pinpoint, you can say to the public that you think this is why those numbers started trending down?
I think really it plays to our police visibility, the police intervention, where our overall crime strategy, our community policing, the National Crime Prevention Office, our level of intel, we recognize that there may be something brewing in a particular between people, and we take the necessary steps to intervene, whether or not they know that we know, and that's the job of the police, is to know. And so
don't tell us that you know.
And take action.
We would have seen a significant amount of these murders would have been retaliation or people, using the term known to the police or involved in some criminal activity. And when you look at that, you say, well, it's still a loss of human life, and it still is in the murder column. But you find, by and large, that is where the majority of these things are, these murders in particular, and shootings are happening. People who are involved in ongoing criminal activity.
Yeah, and that is why our, as part of our strategy, is to the community policing strategy, is to really get into the communities and try to see whether or not we can have an intervention before, or to try to stop these retaliations. Let people know that there's a way. If somebody offends you, you take it to the law. The matter is investigated, and we try to do a thorough investigation to really get to the bottom of it, because it's so easy. Some people are easy to get angry, and sometimes you have to calm people down, and that is why it's important to reach people before they get to that point.
Some of the things that really affect, I think, the wider community, things like armed robberies, stolen vehicles, you saw decreases in those numbers as well. And those are the things, I think, that agitate and that also create that fear of crime, while people who obviously are not involved in criminal activity are still murder victims, are shooting victims, and that is happening, and that still concerns a lot of people. But when you have things like armed robbery decreasing, stolen vehicles, that speaks to ordinary people who may just be victims. Again, do you think that's directly related to your strategy?
I think so. From what we can see, there's a whole lot of PR the National Crime Prevention Office put out there. The Central Detective Units have had meetings with the business community and give them some tips on how to be safe, and we continue to put out the message that people ought to be alert as they move about. You know, we cannot tell you that you may never be a victim of crime,
Sure.
but then our job is really to give you sufficient information to cause you to be aware of things that are likely to happen in your community or as you move about.
It's not been all good news. The incidence of rape rose by 6%, and that's reported cases. I think it's 55 reported cases for the year. That concerns a lot of people in the community, women especially. Any really reason that you can pinpoint that we may have seen that increase? Anything that your intel tells you that may have led to that?
You know, these cases are very sensitive. Rape cases are very sensitive. And, you know, as you indicated, I haven't had the sexual offenses unit. And so I understand the fear in this area. And that is something that I really, as I indicated before in my address to the press, I think all Bahamians ought to bind together to ensure that particularly our young men, understand that they need to stop being possessive. A lot of these things, people won't believe that they own people. People are going about and just attacking. People don't have any respect for our women. I often say that all of us come in the world by women, and I believe that it's a shame for young men, however it is, to go and attack a woman. That is a national disgrace.
It's a cultural thing?
I don't think it's a cultural thing. You have people who believe that they can just go and just take advantage of people, and then again you have people who, like I indicated, young men who believe that they own people. They own people. That's a terrible thing. And that they are the areas that I think we have to continue to educate.
I was going to ask you along those lines, anything you're doing to specifically address that? You know, when you talk about rape, that strikes fear into the heart of women. You know, you have a lot of single women, you have women who move about on their own. The women are terrified. I mean, I think for the most part, that's probably one of the worst things that could happen to a woman.
Yeah. You know, we have apart from the community policing, the National Crime Prevention Office, in the Central Detective Unit, there's a victim relation team that really go about and try to address these things. And whenever we get an opportunity on a speaking engagement, they try to educate people and give them tips on various aspects of criminal activities. And all those things are talked about, and that is why we continue to train the police women in the Royal Bahamas Police Force to really get out there and spread and join with those agencies, those joint partners with those other areas like social services, the Dr. Patterson in those areas, so we can really educate people. And then on the other hand, we have a duty, and family have a duty, wherever it is, have a duty to really sit our young men down and say to them, listen, that is not the way you ought to behave. That is not the way you ought to behave. And make sure from a young age that we teach them not to do things like that. It's terrible. really bad. Yeah.
And quite preventable or avoidable. But to your point, we have to start to educate
Yes.
a bit more. One of the areas, too, that saw a significant increase was in traffic fatalities. 69 people died in 63 traffic accidents that represented an increase of 29%. You called it a source of major concern. I see it every day on the streets. It is a challenge, and we seem to be moving from bad to worse. I mean, what's the strategy to really to address that this year?
I've deployed a last year, middle or last part of last year, about 20, a good number of motorcycles in New Providence, and I've distributed them to the Grand Bahama, Abaco, and other family islands. These are the areas where the bulk of our traffic fatality really take place. And here in New Providence, particularly late at night, for whatever reason, on an island, 21/7, you tend to see people speeding about the street. They're not paying attention. There are persons walking, pedestrians walking, and people still speeding about. And that is why I've had a conversation with the person in charge of the traffic division, and I've given them a mandate. I want them to be a little bit more aggressive in ticketing them. Be out there and make sure that those bikes are moving around, and also to the mobile unit that is out there. You know, it's so interesting. On any given day, when I look at the crime report from the mobile division, we ticket in excess of at least 60 persons over a 24-hour period.
In a day?
Right, in a day, right here in New Providence.
And people still doing this foolishness?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so,
well, maybe you need to double
obviously,
that.
obviously, there's this is an area you'll find that this year we will lend more focus to it. We recognize that people coming from better nightclubs in the night, and
I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times you see, particularly the more gruesome and dramatic fatalities and accidents, and even accidents involving the destruction of property happen overnight, which I think speaks to the condition of people, you know, on the road. Drinking and driving continues to be an issue.
Major issue. And you know, I like it to say that if I am concerned about my friend who I go out with, I should be in a position to say to him, look, that's enough, or let's go.
Or let me drive.
Yeah. You know, I think sometimes it's there may be, I don't know, because I'm not in the vehicle, there may be some reluctance of persons wanting to let another person drive the wheel. I have this belief that if you're drinking, you're out, then you should have a designated driver. I think, and these things call for education. People got to be able to recognize that you're looking to save lives, and so you should be that mature enough to know that you have it, and let somebody else drive you.
I think, and we're going to move on. I think culturally we have been able to get away with drinking and driving for so long. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I had a couple drinks, but I ain't got far to go. And as a people, we have done it for so long that it's ingrained in our behavior in many ways. I mean, I see it all the time. For all of the decline in the statistics in the major areas of crime, there was a rise in an area that was very concerning and continues to be. Last year, there were 11 fatal police shootings, 9 non-fatal shootings. In your annual press conference to release these numbers, you call them casualties of war.
You know, I analyzed things. There were 91 unlawful killings of Bahamians in the Bahamas. We always regret when there are loss of life, I think, because both parties suffer or feel the pain. And these things happen when there are contacts. If you're on the front line, you're more likely to come into contact as a law enforcement officer, likely to come in contact with somebody who puts your life in danger, and the police respond. And so when that happens, an officer has to make a split decision. And that is something between the officer who perceives his life is in danger and the target that is in front of him.
Commissioner, we're at the point of another break in the show, but I want to have a little bit more discussions about these police shootings, because it's obviously caused quite a bit of back and forth in the community, and certainly we want to explore that a little bit more. Our show continues on the other side of this break.
In the past, I've had a lot of issues with service, data service, drop calls. I was encouraged by a very close friend of mine to make the switch, and in doing so, my service has been impeccable. The data is very fast, it doesn't spool, it doesn't take long to load, so everything works beautifully. I like to know what my bills are, and it's important that I'm able to simply just pick up my phone and know what my bill is. The front line for the Valley Boys is comprised of about 200 members. It's very important because to be a successful leader, I need to be able to efficiently and consistently communicate with them. It works that way. It's beautiful. The data that you guys provide is flawless. I'm John Williams, chairman of the Frontline Dancers Association of the Valley Boys, and I believe in best.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home.
With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you.
Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
And welcome back. In 2018, there were 11 fatal police shootings, 9 non-fatal shootings. My guest, the Commissioner of Police, has described them as casualties of war. We began discussing this as we went into the break. Are you concerned, as members of the public have expressed this, but are you concerned that some officers may have become a little trigger happy?
That is not the report that I get, because I have the opportunity to talk to officers who are in the field when these things happen. You know, and really, like, as I indicated, you know, there's always this regret when there's a loss of life, and it goes two ways. It also could have been on the other end. You know, we have lost the life of Inspector Carlos Blatch last year. He was not interfering with anybody. He was on duty, but took the opportunity to go and pick up his child from school, as any responsible parents would, to make sure that their children are safe. And while waiting on his school route, he was attacked by a criminal and shot fatally. That in itself, that's a loss. That's a big loss for the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and a big loss for the country. I had a look at his little children. I think it's either 3 or 4 of them, steps like that, and all of them are still in school. So that is something, and it happened in the front of one of them. That is something that I believe would play on the emotions of that young child for the rest of her life. And so there's two sides that really hurts in these things. So it is difficult to balance that. It's difficult to balance that, and so we say there's always this regret that when a life is lost.
My own personal belief, if you are in a situation with the police and you are given a command, I would think that you would abide by that command or listen. There are sometimes allegations that there was no gun pulled or there was no aggressive, but from the police force's perspective, when something like this happens, when someone is shot by the police, fatally shot or not, what is the proper protocol? What happens at that point? Because there's always the concern from the public that the police will close ranks to protect their own.
Yeah, people would make all kind of comments, whether it's so or not. But there's a procedure when the police is involved in a shooting, and a fatal shooting. The coroner is immediately contacted, who then takes charge of that investigation. She's assisted by the police, but it's under direction of the coroner, and the coroner has wide powers in summoning anybody who might have any information as it relates to the particular incident that is before her. And I've seen that system work. What is interesting, we have had police officers who went to prison. We investigated. Police officers went to prison for where persons died by police. They went to prison. You don't really hear anything out of that. I think life has to be balanced. Life has to be balanced.
Now, sometimes you find yourselves, or the police will find themselves in very difficult situations. I want to recap sort of D'Angelo Evans incident. Shot multiple times by a police. Community absolutely outraged. This happened in the Masons Edition area. Conflicting stories. Once something like that happens, and considering this is still an ongoing investigation, how do you then go back to the public and ask them to trust you, to participate, to continue to report crimes? That, I remember and I watched how that played out, and I thought, it'll be interesting to see how the police will navigate through this. How do you go back to the public when something like that happens, when there's such this outpouring of outrage, particularly in a community like that, that tends to be a hotspot, that that you're trying to build a relationship, and something like that happens, and it's seemingly lost?
I think we are well trained to be able to interact in these situations, and know how to handle these things. It's never personal. It should never be personal, and so you'll find that officers are able to interact with family despite what you may see. We have had good relationships with families who where these things have happened. We have a very good relationship with them and continue to do so today. And that is why it is so important for the police and the public to keep a dialogue.
But Commissioner, police are human. You all get tired, you get fed up. I'm sure you get sick and tired of seeing the same people sometimes. And sometimes there is a natural human reaction. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that? I mean, what is the level of training, or what is supposed to happen in instances like the same fella, he just get out, he out there doing foolishness again, using the term you use all the time, known to the police. You got to go back to deal with this again, and
It should always be on a professional level. It's never be personal. The police has a mandate, and you carry out the mandate, and you have to continue to still interact with people. And it's been my experience that we're able to do that. I believe I believe that people really understand, and people like for you to talk straight to them. And I think that has been what we have been doing, is talking straight to people.
Yet complaints against police officers increased last year by 24%. 245 complaints by members of the public against the police. 68 investigations were complete. 177 remain incomplete. And as a matter of fact, 85 incomplete from 2017. What do you, I mean, how do you, I mean, that's a significant rise, first of all. What do you attribute to that increase?
I think in policing, frontline policing, I would say, you are very likely to have somebody make a complaint against you, and that's why it has to be investigated. And it's an incident complaint. It's looked at as an incident complaint. Whatever the issues are, it's a complaint. If somebody feels that they were not dealt with properly, that's a complaint against the police. So not all of those complaints are physical complaints, and that's what people may not know, because all it is complaint against the police. You can show up to the police station and somebody talk to you, you feel somebody talked to you badly, and that person is aggrieved, and so they go to the police complaint unit and they make a complaint. That's a complaint against the police. And so when you add those up, you know, people are in at the police station regularly, and officers on the streets go out and doing exchanges, conversations. Those things are, a member of the public feel that I don't like the way the officer talked to me, I'm going to the complaint unit. And we encourage that. We encourage that.
Only 68 of the complaints have been, only 68 investigations have been completed. Why such a low number?
But you know, because of the volume, I think and you want to be thorough in your investigations, and you're not, and some complaints are not, you're not, for various reasons, are not able to be concluded in a very short time.
And in instances where disciplinary action has to be taken, I don't get the sense that that's shared with the public.
It will be shared with the person concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like a magistrate court or Supreme Court where the information is just flashed out there.
Right.
But if the matter touches between the police force and an individual, the individual has the right to know the outcome.
Okay. That has happened. But you know, have you found? I guess again to all of that is, have you found, or is there statistical information to show that the disciplinary action has that increased? Have you had to discipline more officers, or you know, what has been the outcome of the investigations in terms of the effects on the officers? I mean, because I'm sure you get a lot of erroneous stuff and people are annoyed, or there's an issue and you know nothing may come out of it. But what about, have you seen an increase in disciplinary action?
Well, as per complaints, and once is completed, a decision may be taken to take disciplinary action by way of putting the officer before a police tribunal, which is like a magistrate court. Somebody sits, hear the evidence. The policy is the same way a magistrate court is conducted. It should be the tribunal is conducted in the same like manner, and so if the evidence is not supported, the matter is dismissed, and the officer ought to be told that the results of the case, and so as the person who make the report should also be told the result of the case. And so persons who are disciplined, really, they are fearful when they know they have to be disciplined, because you don't know what the sitting president, who's actually the judge of that court, what they would recommend. And so it's not a slap on the wrist thing.
So I guess that's a little comforting to the public, because sometimes we don't know what happens to officers that charges are brought against, or complaints are brought against, and what action is taken. So interesting to note that. We are at the point of another break. When we come back, our final segment as we continue our conversation with the police commissioner. Stay with us.
On the Record was brought to you by Crystal Clear H2O Alkaline Water. Live it, love it, drink it.
Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true, and open debate they've been looking for.
And the icon goes to On the Record.
On the Record was born out of a desire to do something different. What we do every day helps our country, it helps our society, it helps to shape the views and opinions.
Listen, what is more dangerous than
Gentlemen,
corruption?
we've got to move very quickly. Let's wrap up.
Integrity.
It's all On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break. December 20th, following 3 double homicides, the police commissioner was quoted as saying, "Be careful of the company you keep." So I think my grandmother and grand-aunts, and I think even my mother would say to us as children growing up, but speaks, I think, to circumstances that a lot of criminals find themselves in, and victims of crime find themselves in. I chose that quote because I thought it very interesting, and I wanted to explore it a little bit more and what really was behind that message.
Jerome, I grew up with exactly that same quote. My grandparents always tell me to be careful with the company that you keep. As we investigate, we would come up with information, and we would know of things. So I did not just make that statement just as signals flying through the air. I was satisfied that what I said, I wanted people to understand fully, and I make it again, that you ought to know something about the company that you are in, the person that you are hanging out with, the location where you are. You have to know something about that location. And we are satisfied that persons could have probably still be around had they not been at certain locations and
with certain people.
With certain people.
Interesting.
So,
very good word. I just wanted to really understand, you know, what was the thinking behind that statement, but certainly very self-explanatory. From as far back, though, as December, the Prime Minister and even the Minister of National Security and other senior officers told the media the fear of crime is down. How is the fear of crime different from actual crime, and how do you determine that the fear of crime is down?
I think it has to do with person feeling that there are sufficient visibility of the police. The police are making certain interventions in various communities that that they would love to see them in. And from talking to people, when you find people are telling you that I feel that I can go here, I feel that I can go there, and I had a good time being there. And they'll tell you, prior to that, I would not have gone out. And the whole idea is really, you want to make people should not feel as if they are barricaded in their home. I believe that people ought to be able to move about, go where they want to go and enjoy themselves, and then when they're ready, they go home.
And that is true. I mean, in my own personal experience, I find myself not as tense as I was in previous, situations, but also, still, as you all always caution, very alert and very aware of what's happening around you. One of the things that has been talked about that is scheduled to come about this year are body cameras. In other countries, videos from these body cams have led to even actions against the police officers for behavior. Are you all prepared for the implications of what this may bring?
I think the public want to see a more professional police organization. And you cannot remain in the same position for the rest of your life. And I think there has to be transparency so people can really see and know. It comes right back to complaints against the police. Wouldn't it be good if somebody make a report about something that you're able to go and see and prove that is not so, and vice versa? I think that is something that I welcome, and it's going to require training and sensitization, and officers have got to know that they are on the microscope.
When you have instances, and there are times when you have instances with police on camera, whether through their own or people using phones, which have become the latest craze with video. We capture everything on video now. Incident, where a police officer is slapping a civilian and it goes viral, or the video with the officers drinking in the patrol car. You have those things that you have to deal with. How do you, when something like that arises, how do you handle it?
Very simple. Very simple. There's an investigation. There is a police act that has a whole list of offenses. You can't do this. You can't do that. And we follow that. And if you are wrong, then those things take effect. Once you go before the tribunal, the evidence is there. That is going to affect you.
And I think that's the biggest thing for the public. They do want to know that there is a recourse and a course of action, but it is a stain on the police when something like that happens. And we live in a world now where everything is viral, everything is circulated via social media or other avenues. So people are seeing these things like never before.
And sometimes what is interesting though, in some cases, you would see a clip that is focused on just that. But there's a whole sequence of events that follows to that point.
That would have led up to that.
And so that would really be good with the body cam. While you come with your little clip,
right?
But the body cam will
have the whole
incident.
I think we may have some different discussions with body cams coming into place. As we look ahead now, you certainly have some great statistics from last year to speak to the major decreases. But what can we look forward to from your policing plan for 2019?
I've decided, Jerome, that policing plan 2018, and if you look through it and check mark it, we have completed very close to everything that we said that we will do in there, and it worked wonderful for us. And so I've determined that I will not do too much of changing, very, very minor adjustment on some things, because it is still a plan in works. We have done a lot of good things, and I don't think you should stray from something that is actually working. The whole idea is to reduce crime, reduce the fear of crime, professionalize the organization, good physical management of the resources and the organization in itself, and we will continue to build on those things.
You know, as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Final question, and this is really something that's personal to a lot of people. A lot of times people find themselves staring down the barrel of a gun, or on the other side, you're looking down the barrel of a gun, on the other side is that assailant, just as, or even more nervous than you. A lot of times criminals are committing crimes, and you know, the police say a lot of times, you know, that person is probably more nervous than you are. What do? You find yourself in the middle of being held up or in the middle of a crime. What advice do you give people who are in the middle of something like that?
My advice to persons who face that particular situation is you have to be very cautious, because a lot of times persons who have a weapon in their hand, particularly criminals, and they panic and the gun goes off. And so the best thing to do is try and remain as calm as you possibly can, and don't make no advances to try to attack the person with the gun in their hand, because the end results may not be in your favor. And I think sometimes that may be difficult for some people, because then some people, adrenaline is flowing,
you are afraid,
and they make a decision and they said, you know, I can do this and I can do that. You know, it's a decision one have to really take, but bearing in mind some of the consequences that could follow. And so we often try as best as possible. That's not easy to do. Not easy to do.
I haven't been in that situation.
Yeah, not easy to do.
That's a terrifying place to be in. Yeah.
The person himself, that's a decision they have to really make.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Thanks. Commissioner, I first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing with us. We certainly appreciate you taking the time and talking about what has happened, and certainly what we can look forward to. Yours is probably one of the most difficult jobs in the country, I can well imagine. But like so many others out there, we support you. We support the work that you and the officers are doing. And I do want to say that, you know, we encourage our police officers. We appreciate the work that they are doing, and we support you. And the work that you do. So continue to do good works, and certainly express that to the officers. We thank you for continuing to keep us safe. It's not an easy job by no stretch of the imagination. So thank you so very much. All the best to you. And certainly by next year, this time, we hope to be talking about numbers that have decreased even more. Okay.
And thank you so much. I certainly will convey to the officers, and I will invite them to watch.
Yeah.
You know,
I know some of the officers very well, you know. They just get on me for parking and running the light and other things. You know, do your job. You know, if you got to give me a ticket, I find the money to pay. But certainly I appreciate them. I always say to them, you know, I appreciate you doing your job. And if whomever it is, if you're breaking the law, I expect for you to be there to enforce the law. So I appreciate
and we really appreciate that when members of the public are telling the officers, we appreciate what you do. I think that goes a long way in helping them. Yeah.
Certainly, and we do appreciate it. So thank you very much for coming on. We hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to Police Commissioner Anthony Ferguson. I'd like to also thank my producer, technical staff, and certainly we look forward to your continuing viewership throughout this year. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time right here on The Record.